wearing my Yoda green today because it is Star Wars Day, and being the huge lifelong Star Wars fan that I am, I thought it would be prudent to bring forth some lessons from Star Wars that we can and should pay attention to amidst the coronavirus crisis. Now, George Lucas had some political things in mind, some things he didn't have in mind when creating Star Wars. But the reality is that there are some very stark lessons, some very important lessons that Star Wars teaches us about society, about government, about empowering government, empowering authoritarian dictators to subvert the will of the people, but with seemingly the consent of the people. Because they allow him, they acquiesce power to him and allow him to take charge. That is what we see especially in the prequels of Star Wars for the rise of Chancellor Palpatine, who is a man who seems so caring about ethics, who seems to really care about democracy, about the idea that the Republic should be preserved. The Republic, of course, throughout the episodes 1 through 3 of Star Wars, is the body that controls the galaxy through a democratic type of situation. Now, how democratic it is, I don't know. The galaxy is vast. There are lots of people in the Senate. Naboo has a queen that's elected, but a queen nonetheless, and then sends a senator to the Galactic Senate. So you don't know how democratic the Republic really is, but it certainly is a democratic sort of institution. And it's a parliamentary system in the sense that the Chancellor is elected by the Senate, by the legislative body, kind of like the UK, United Kingdom, or maybe like the European Union. Some have said that the Star Wars Galactic Senate and its republic structure is more like the European Union or sort of the United Nations, and then you elect a leader from that body. That may be the case. Regardless, that's the authority that is in the galaxy, is the Republic, the Senate, which elects a chancellor. In Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, we see Palpatine replace Valorum, the failed chancellor, who lost out to the passions of the galactic senators, who were concerned about corruption from Valorum and replaced Chancellor Valorum with Palpatine. Now, Palpatine took charge, and for like a decade, he was in charge as Chancellor of the Galactic Senate before a crisis happened, a separatist crisis, where a war was afoot. This would begin the Clone Wars, a galactic civil war, really the first galactic civil war that would take place. And in Episode 2, Palpatine was given extensive authority. Let's go ahead and play Cut 2 from Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where Palpatine manages to secure emergency powers, and he sounds oh so sincere about his love for the Republic and for democracy.
It is with great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
The power you give me, I will lay down when this crisis has abated.
Emergency powers given to the leader of a democratic society. And notice he says, the powers you give me, I will lay down when this crisis has abated. Right now, we're faced with an emergency. Across the nation, we see death and destruction as a result of two things. One, the coronavirus itself, which has taken lives, tragically. Nearly 70,000 Americans have died as a result of COVID-19 and this pandemic. And then we have the destruction of the economy that has happened particularly because governors have shut down the economy and persisted as such. Here you have a society right now in the United States of America where we have given emergency powers, not because legislatures have necessarily said, oh, this is a crisis, therefore we're going to give you this emergency authority, but they've already given it. And then the governors unilaterally take control. Some have said, well, I'm only going to take this for a short period of time, and they're starting to reopen already. Others have said, this could go on for months and months. Certainly, we see the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. We see the governor of New Jersey, the governor of Virginia. Now, they are faced with genuine crises, but they are giving indications that they may keep things shut down for as long as they feel it's necessary, for months on end, potentially. Will they lay down their powers when this crisis has abated? Perhaps. Probably the authority to shut things down will stop, but there will be an increase in authority. There will be an expansion of power in these states that the people of those states will probably tolerate for some time. We saw in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Chancellor Palpatine finally take his place as the leader of the galaxy, not so much just as a chancellor, but actually as the new emperor of a galactic empire. Now, this is years after assuming authority at the beginning of this war, and now he's got a new enemy, the Jedi. And you can hear the Senate acquiesce, give in to the desire for Palpatine to take power. Let's play cut 3.
In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
For a safe and secure society, the Republic reorganized into the first galactic empire. Now, no governor, no president will be explicit. No governor or president will say, hey, I'm amassing this power and we're turning it into an empire. The Empire State of New York will truly at last become the first American empire state. Now, that's not literally going to happen. But what we see in the prequels of Star Wars is the usurpation of liberty by the government, and in particular by one single individual. Now, James Madison had serious warnings about the accumulation of power in the hands of one individual. Let's put up this quote. We put it up last week. James Madison, in Federalist number 47, he had this to say about the accumulation of power by one person or one small group of people. The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. Now, what are we seeing from these governors? What are we seeing from these governors? And also in Star Wars from Palpatine, but the accumulation of power in the hands of one individual, legislative, executive, and judicial. Palpatine becomes one sole authoritarian who has maximum control over the galaxy. And in our states, state after state after state, you have governors who have decided that they can unilaterally shut things down and don't have to worry about individual rights. You know, the Governor Murphy of New Jersey was on Tucker Carlson's show a couple weeks ago on the Fox News channel, and he basically said he's not paying attention to the Bill of Rights during this crisis. It's not a concern of his. Yet individual rights are not to be subordinated to the government strictly because there is a crisis. That does not mean that the government can't be implementing some policies, but we must keep in mind that whether it is this crisis or a future crisis and past crises that we have faced as a country, that every time we give government more authority, they may give a lot of it back, but they still retain a good bit. They still retain a lot of power because the people let them. Now, in the Star Wars saga, it took years for the Empire to amass its authority. And let's add in now cut 6. Because in Episode 4, A New Hope, the original Star Wars movie, you have a very seminal meeting among leaders of the Empire in Governor Tarkin's region, Grand Moff Tarkin's region on the Death Star. And it's interesting because, I think 20-something years have passed between Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, when Palpatine takes charge, and Episode 4, A New Hope, when this takes place. And throughout that time, the Galactic Senate has been there as sort of a placeholder institution to give people a sense of normalcy. This is still a republic. This is still a democracy. We've just given it a different name, the Galactic Empire. And we know that, the Emperor has a lot of power, but there's still a Senate. Until now.
The rebellion will continue to gain a support in the Imperial Senate.
The Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
That's impossible. How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy?
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
Regional governors now have direct control, and he's banking on fear of the Death Star. Their battle station, sure created by the galactic government, the Galactic Empire, to keep systems in line, but they have no need for the Senate anymore, so they dispel with the Senate. There's no need for it anymore, and the governors will have this authority. Now, we don't have a Death Star, and coronavirus was in no way created by the government of the United States, nor something that the government had any intention of bringing in. This happened naturally, and politicians have responded accordingly. And understandably, we have lost tens of thousands of American lives. But at the same time, these governors across the country have amassed great power, again, usurping individual rights. Although, as the judge in Michigan who last week ruled in favor of upholding Governor Whitmer's order there, said liberty interests are subject to society's interests. That's sort of the philosophy here for why they're amassing this kind of power and authority. But they've been using the coronavirus as at least an opportunity to expand power. Now, I'm not saying that it's not necessarily intentional for them to do it because they want to help people and genuinely believe. Absolutely, that could well be the case, that they are, and I think for most governors in this country, that's the intention. The intention is to help people, and they believe that empowering government is the way to do it. Philosophically, they believe it. And so you can't fault them for their intentions, but as has been said many times before, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. You heard in that first clip from Episode 2, Palpatine, seemingly sincere, wanting to protect the democratic society that they've got, ensure the Republic. Now, we know he was not particularly sincere as a Sith Lord all around the galaxy. He just wanted to, everywhere he would go, he had dreams of taking control and having maximum power. But what if he was sincere? What if he did think that democracy and the republic had failed? And he believed that actions were taking too much time to get done. We had crises that the galaxy was facing. You must act now. Quickly. We don't have time. So what do? You give power to the one person who can just unilaterally make decisions. That's what we're seeing. Good intentions or not, we are seeing the amassing of power in the hands of people who believe that government is all-knowing and all-powerful and should be providing for the people. And talking about accumulation of power, there's one more clip I want to play of Palpatine. This is cut 1, where the Chancellor assumes total authority even before he's declared his first galactic empire. Take a look at what he declares himself to be.
In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest, Chancellor.
Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?
The Senate will decide your fate.
I am the Senate.
I am the Senate, Palpatine says, which channels Louis XIV, who said, I am the state, but shows the arrogance of this single politician who has accumulated mass amounts of authority in his hands and his hands alone. We heard the clip, well, I read the quote of James Madison a moment ago. Let's go to another leader of the United States historically. This is Thomas Jefferson, about experience and those with power who have been trusted with the power. He once said, "Experience hath shown that even under the best forms of government, those entrusted with power have in time and by slow operations perverted it into tyranny." Even under the best forms of government, those entrusted with power have, in time and by slow operations, perverted it into tyranny. This is what happens when a free society becomes subordinated to the will of elected politicians or unelected bureaucrats, where we say, hey, you can take our rights because we have a crisis. You'll give them back to us. Those who are concerned about civil liberties in the Patriot Act, have they returned rights because maybe terrorism's threats are not quite as pronounced in the same way as they were 15 years ago? Patriot Act still in effect. We've seen FISA abuse. Look at the Michael Flynn story that we're learning more about. The way in which the FBI acted illegally and specifically to get Flynn to lie under oath, now proven. Perverted into tyranny over time. We have given, over the decades, more and more authority. Palpatine took several years. First, he took a decade to get emergency powers, and then several years more to amass greater and greater authority to the point where he was finally able to unilaterally declare the first galactic empire. Again, we're not going to see that extent of authority lost in America where suddenly we will lose all our freedoms for the future out into perpetuity. Democrats certainly are trying to paint that picture of Donald Trump, who they say might just not leave office, or at the very least will cancel or postpone the 2020 elections in November. Even Biden reportedly floating that sort of idea. Now that's absurd. There's no evidence to even suggest something as ludicrous as that. But there is evidence to suggest that Democrats right now are doing what they can in state after state to garner greater authority in their hands to address this crisis and even to empower the president in some instances. They were calling on the president to invoke the Defense Production Act, which he has, but not as expansively as they would like. I mean, I look at the Trump administration. I see his unilateral trade authority to start a trade war with China as dangerous for any president to have that kind of unilateral authority. That happened over time. That was approved decades ago. And he decided to take that and put it into a trade war. We saw something similar with the southern border. I believe in building a wall at the southern border. but not through eminent domain and a president of the United States unilaterally saying, let's build this. Let's go about it in these ways. So it isn't just one side or another, but what we're seeing more significantly right now is one side predominantly in state after state giving more governors more and more authority. I want one more quote up on the screen here before we go to a break. Thomas Jefferson saying this: every government degenerates when trusted to the rulers of the people alone. The people themselves are its only safe depositories. Every government, he says, degenerates when trusted to the rulers of the people alone. The Palpatines of the galaxy, the Palpatines of the planet, the Palpatines of the country, the Palpatines of the state or the city. The people themselves are its only safe depositories. You and me, Nathan Matoush, we're all in this together as people who are the ones responsible for ensuring liberty, for protecting our society, and for making sure that government doesn't amass too much authority. We need to be mindful of this. Learn the lessons of Star Wars on this May the 4th. Because we may well be, as one author put it a few years ago, going at hyperspeed to serfdom, or riding with a hyperdrive to serfdom. Channeling F.A. Hayek. It's our job, our duty, to stand up for our liberties and not allow a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital or in our own state capitals to make all the determinations for us to amass authority that they may or may not fully give back when this crisis has abated. Will they lay it down when the crisis has abated? That's the question. We need to ensure the answer is yes. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger. May the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day. When we come back, some quick reaction from Nathan Matoush, working the Matoush Magic as producer extraordinaire.
Ladies and gentlemen, happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Let's bring back the set. The greatest Jedi Master of all time, Master Yoda, with Jimmy Sengenberger. Yo, the man, Jimmy. Yo, the man.
Nathan Matoush, producer extraordinaire, working the Matoush Magic. And yes, indeed, on this Star Wars Day, after my commentary, for a few moments we have Yoda on the set. As Yoda has said before, and we must all heed these words because I just taught a lesson in the last segment about what Star Wars can teach us about government. Let's get my lower third away. We got to see Yoda as I say the line. Mind what you have learned, save you it can, help you it will. Indeed, Nathan Matoush, producer extraordinaire, we must mind what we have learned. How are you doing, brother? Happy Star Wars Day.
Jimmy, happy Star Wars Day. Thanks for having me on yet again. And we're with Master Yoda today. I like it.
Yeah, well, what did you make of my commentary there as I was kind of breaking down how Star Wars can teach us important lessons about the role of government, the expansion of government authority, and the crises which we face like this one?
I think it was really thoughtful. I mean, we can learn a lot from watching Star Wars. I think a lot of people forget how political Star Wars was. Especially like those newer ones, they're so into like the Jedi Knights and the clones and the Clone Wars. You forget really how much politics is influencing Star Wars. And I think you put it out there really nicely, Jimmy. I liked what you had to say. And, it just shows that, what happens when you give too much power to one person. He changes it into, a tyrannical type of thing, you know, like what happened with Chancellor Palpatine. So again, I like how you put it out there.
Well, you know, Yoda told Luke, control, control, you must learn control. Unfortunately, I think that politicians have gotten the wrong lesson from that and said, okay, I must learn how to control the people in these sorts of ways. But just a final thought here, Nathan, before we run to our break, with regards to Star Wars and the lessons. I mean, there are a lot of lessons, and I don't know the extent to which George Lucas meant some of these lessons, but I think that we can nonetheless take those lessons from the saga and understand that giving power to one individual, particularly because you're facing a crisis, that's something you shouldn't do. That's a lesson we need to learn.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. You said it exactly right. And I think what came to my mind, too, is an Abraham Lincoln quote that I mustered up here.
Give it to us.
Yeah, this is Abraham Lincoln. He says, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves.
Mind what you have learned. Save you it can, help you it will, Mr. Matoush.
Thank you, Master Yoda.
We're having too much fun here. We got to get to some serious topics coming up here with Phil Van Dorn. Nathan Matoush, producer extraordinaire, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jimmy, and may the 4th be with you.
And with your spirit. We're both Catholic, so it's a little Catholic joke going on here. Thanks for watching this clip of Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe today to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel. You do not want to miss our live show. Thanks for your support.
I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.